השמש פזורחת, ציפורים מראש כל גג, מבשרות את בוא החג. ט"ו בשבט הגיע, חג האילנות.
We'll just let this play out a bit.
ט"ו בשבט הגיע, חג האילנות.
Okay, we'll leave the English part of it out. Today is Tu Bishvat. Now, interestingly enough, we'll come back to that, but it hit me yesterday. The song goes, Tu Bishvat higia chag ha'ilanot. Tu Bishvat is here, it's the festival of the trees. We're going to learn the Mishnah about it in a moment, and it says, the Mishnah says, now I can't see it, but it says chag ha'ilan, singular. And there's a difference there in the Mishnah. We'll see why. Okay, we have not had a shir since Parshas Mikeitz, which we didn't have a shir in Mikeitz. I did a very short shir. I've been away. The way I described it on Shabbos is the bookends of my trip, where I was leaving Melbourne. I was in the line to check in on the plane, waiting to get my boarding pass in, when we got a message to say Bondi attack. So what's happening in Bondi? That's what a message from Orion Israel. It's like, what's happening? And I look on my phone and we all know what happened. At that point in time, they said it appears that there was a shooting and it seems like the two people have been killed. And get on the plane, I had 9 hours from here to Bangkok, and I had somebody talking to me pretty much most of that 9-hour flight. Guy next to me was really interested in Yiddishkeit and Judaism, and I'm just thinking, something's going on in Bondi. Just leave me alone. I want to learn Torah. I'm not interested. But I engaged with this man, and we had an interesting discussion. But at some point I said, I need to have a rest. And land in Bangkok, and as we're landing, I turned my phone on, and then I realized what happened. And this is now 9 hours later, so everything is known. And it was a shock, and I burst into tears. And this man looks at me like, is everything all right? I showed him my phone, and he kind of realized what was going on. And he realized those 9 hours of discussion that we had, or whatever, the 6 hours, whatever it was, what the Jewish people are going through, have been through since the day dot, really, but since the last 2.5 years particularly. The other side of my trip, the bookend, I come back, and that was the time, the week that Ron Gavili's body was found. Is the war over? No, it is not over. But there are no more hostages. For the first time in 12 years, there's no Jewish hostages in Gaza. And so that was my trip in a nutshell. It was incredible. I did give a short share. I don't know if anybody watched it, but I put a very short discussion on that Monday morning, just in the shock on Parshas Mikeitz. I don't think I even discussed the Parsha really. So what I'd like to do today is run through, in as quick time as possible, all the Parshas we've missed. And then discuss a little bit this week's Parsha and discuss Tu Bishvat. That's the intention. God willing, we'll get through all of that and we'll see how we go. So we left where Yosef is in jail. He interprets the dreams of the butler and the baker. The baker loses his head. The butler's head is elevated. He gets back to his position and he goes back to serve Paro. And Yosef says to him, please remember me and don't forget. And the butler goes back and he doesn't remember. Or he does remember and then he forgets. And then he remembers and he doesn't remember. And he just, for 2 years, he does not remember Yosef. He goes to sleep at night. He puts a little thing around his wrist reminding him about Yosef. Wakes up in the morning, the thing on his wrist's fallen off. Things like that. The Midrash talks about all these different things. Eventually, it says, Vayhi Mikeitz, it was the end of 2 years, Shanatayim Yomim, the end of 2 years. Paro's birthday again. This is the source of having birthday parties. Paro has a birthday party. And Paro had a dream, and we know the dreams about the fat and the thin cows and the fat and the thin stalks or ears of corn. 7 of each, and nobody can interpret. They interpret it all in very strange ways. And Yosef, the butler, says, I remember there was this Jew boy, little Hebrew boy, a slave in jail with me. He interprets dreams. Yosef is brought out, and he interprets Paro's dreams, and he gives Paro advice, not advice that was sought out, but he just decides he's going to give Paro advice what to do. And Paro says, what a wise guy. This guy's brilliant. Let's use him. And we'll use his advice. And Egypt goes through 7 years of plenty. Yosef gathers all the food in, and then it's going to go through 7 years of famine. The Yaakov is in Israel with his children in Eretz Israel, Eretz Canaan at the time, and there's drought, and he sends them down. The whole story with the brothers coming down, bowing down to Yosef. Binyamin's not with them. He keeps Shimon with him. The other brothers go back. Their money's in their sack. There's this whole to and froing between them. And eventually, Yehuda tells his father, no, we got to go back. We got to take Binyamin with us. They take Binyamin with us, and they go back down to Egypt. That is really already into end of Parshas Mikeitz. And Parshas Mikeitz basically ends where Yosef tests the brothers to see that they've actually done tshuva, have they repented, and he puts his special golden goblet, this special goblet, which he's able to divine with, so they think, in Binyamin's sack, and he sends them off. And he sends his messengers, one of his sons, after them. They chase after them, and they find this goblet and all their money, and they come back. And there is now going to be a standoff between Yehuda and Yosef. Going forward through history till the time of Mashiach, comes Mashiach, and we're going to have Mashiach ben Yosef, followed by Mashiach ben David, which is from the tribe of Yehuda. So there's these two kings in the tribes. Yehuda is the ultimate king, but Yosef has some form of kingship, and that comes out in his workings with Paro, and that he is elevated to be the viceroy. That's the end of Mikeitz. Vayigash comes along, and Yehuda steps forward, and now there's this confrontation between the two of them. And the brothers, we know that Shimon and Levi decimated the whole of the city of Shechem. The 12 or the 11 brothers together could decimate all of Egypt. And Yosef realizes this, and this confrontation's about to happen, and Yosef breaks down. And he says, Ani Yosef, ha'id avichai, I'm Joseph, is our father still alive? Is my father still alive? And the brothers don't believe it, and he shows them various signs, and they now realize. Now they go back and they need to tell Yaakov, well, guess what? The son that you thought 22 years ago had died, he's still alive. He's in Egypt, he's in charge, we've got to go down to Egypt. Yaakov is not sure if he should go down. They go partway there, and Hashem comes to him and says, go down to Egypt. And he goes down. It's said that he goes down with 70 people. The Torah counts them. There's only 69. There's a discussion of who the 70th is. Some opinions bring that it's Yocheved, whose Moshe Rabbeinu's mother was born between the walls. In other words, her mother was pregnant, and she was born as they were coming into Egypt. Others' opinions say it was Hashem was the 70th, or Yaakov himself. But they come down to Egypt, all 70 of them, and the Torah lists all the people that came down, including Yosef and his wife and their 2 children, which I skipped out, but that's what happened in between. Yosef then arranges for his father to meet Paro. He says he had a very difficult life, and he goes through a whole story with Paro, and he actually loses a few years of his life because he wasted so many words complaining about how difficult his life was. The sources say that his life was cut short and he didn't live as long as his father and grandfather. The famine goes on, and the Jewish people are living in Goshen, and they're all happy. There's different opinions how long the famine actually lasted for, because it seems like when Yaakov came down, he gave Paro a blessing that the water should rise up for him. And that might be the end of the famine after 2 years. The other opinions say no, it kept going throughout. Interestingly enough, one just final little point there, pretty much all of the Egyptian people and other people from around sold their grain and their animals and their properties to Paro. Yosef was able to make the Egyptian royalty extremely wealthy, but he didn't put a tax onto the priests. And in Australian tax law, we still have a little remnant of that. Anybody who's a member of the clergy doesn't pay fringe benefits tax. So people would structure payments, salary packages for clergy based on fringe benefits tax as opposed to cash tax, so that you can pay them less and they still earn more. But that I believe, is a remnant of all of this. And so ends Vayigash. The last parsha in Bereshis, in Genesis, is Vayechi, the end of Yaakov's life. Yaakov lived for 17 years in Egypt, and he dies. The whole story about his death, he's embalmed, which is an interesting case. I might come back to that in a moment. But he is in Egypt, he dies. They go back, take him up to bury him, get permission from Paro to bury him in Maras Machpelah with Leah, his wife, and his parents and grandparents, and Adam and Chava in Hebron, in the cave where they still are today. When they go back, there's a whole discussion. This is not brought directly in the Torah, it's in the Midrashic sources, but his mother, Rochel, had a prophecy that she said, should I lose both my sons on the same day? Esav had come along to dispute that he felt it was his, because he was the firstborn, he should be buried there. And there was a whole dispute. Yaakov's body is lying, waiting to be buried. And Chushim ben Dan, who was deaf, one of Yaakov's grandchildren, sees this whole dispute going on, and he kills Esav. Esav's head's chopped off and his head rolls into the cave. So they didn't die on the same day, but they were buried on the same day. So Rochel had a prophecy there, according to most opinions. Yaakov is buried. Before that, let me just jump back. He gives all the 12 tribes blessings. He starts off by blessing Reuven, and he takes him to task, and he takes Shimon and Levi to task, and then he starts blessing each of the 12 tribes, and then he passes away. And then the Sefer Bereshis, the book of Genesis, ends that the brothers come to Yosef and say, our father told us that you need to be nice to us. So just be nice. And Yosef says, don't worry, it'll all be good. I'm your brother. And Yosef died when he was 110 years old. They embalmed him and placed him in a coffin in Egypt. Because they didn't want him to leave, because he brought such blessing to the land of Egypt, they wouldn't allow him to leave. He made, and all the 12 tribes made, take a promise that they would take his bones out of there, take his body from there. And we'll come back to that in a moment, and that ties back to what I said we'll come back to. That ends the book of Genesis. All right, we're doing well. That was about less than 15 minutes. Okay. The book of Shmois. Now, this week's Parsha is Yisro, so we've got to get to Shmois, Va'era, Bo, Beshallach. Only 4 weeks. Easy, because it's pretty simple. The Jewish people are in Egypt. Generations pass by. The brothers have all died. Levi's the last brother, and he dies. And the Jewish people are now enslaved by Paro. Slavery starts after the death of the 12 tribes. Slavery gets worse over time. It starts off slow and gets worse and worse and worse. But we have the story of infanticide, that Paro wants to kill the Jewish boys. And he asks the Jewish midwives to kill the children as they're born, and they say they can't, they refuse to. They say, no, the Jewish women are different to Egyptian women, they don't need a midwife. They get their babies born before we even get there. They clearly did not want to kill their families' children as they were born. And so Shifra and Puah, the Torah calls them, that was Yocheved and her daughter Miriam. And they let them live, and then Yocheved had, let's take a step back. Miriam's parents had Miriam and Aaron, and they decide they need to separate, because if Paro's going to kill all the boys, they just can't live like that. And young Miriam says, hang on, parents, Amram, Yocheved, shouldn't call them by their name, we don't call our parents by their names. She said, listen, Mummy, Daddy, you can't divorce. What about all the girls that would have been born? There's still going to be a Jewish people if there's one girl. And so they remarried, And Yocheved falls pregnant, and she gives birth to a child, and it says that it was good, Kitov, and they named him Tuvia. And the baby was born very much premature, and she's able to keep him alive for 3 months, hidden away, because the Egyptian necromancers knew that somebody's going to be born who's going to save the Jewish people through water, and he's going to die through water. And after 3 months, she can no longer keep them hidden because they knew the date he was supposed to be born. And so she puts him in a basket, covers it outside in tar, and puts him in the river. And the river saves him. And Miriam stands by and watches, and Paro's daughter comes along, and the Chazal tell us, the rabbis tell us, that she had come along to convert to Judaism. Even though she was Paro's daughter, she'd come to the Nile River to go into the mikveh to convert. Whatever that means in those days. Because she saw the beauty of the Jewish people. She rescues Moshe. Miriam comes along and says, they try to feed him and he won't drink from a non-Jewish woman. And so Miriam comes along and says, I can get a Hebrew woman to feed him. And she takes him home, and Moshe is brought up for the first couple of years of his life till he's weaned by his parents. He then goes back to the palace. Basia, or Bisya, as she's called by Chazal, or we might say Batya, brings up Moshe. She's the one who calls him Moshe, because Moshe comes from that I removed him from the water. His parents gave him the name Tuvia. So that's a Trivial Pursuit question. It's worth knowing that kind of information in general knowledge kind of games. And so Moshe is now growing up in the palace, and there's a very good reason for that. The rest of the Jewish people, except for the tribe of Levi, the rest of them were enslaved. But the tribe of Levi, whilst they were the leaders of the Jews, they were not in positions of leadership to be able to negotiate with Paro. Hashem needed somebody who had lived in the palace, who knew what being a king was like. And in fact, according to the Medrash, Moshe, after he killed the Egyptian, we'll jump to that now, he killed the Egyptian, the sand, he buried him in the sand. The next day, 2 Jewish people were fighting, Dasan and Aviram. They gave him trouble his whole life. And they said, look, you're going to kill us as well. He said, there's Lashon Hara going on here. We just can't take this. And he runs away. He then, according to the Medrash, he goes to Ethiopia. And there's a civil war going on there. And the king is killed. And the king's son is too young. Moshe becomes the king of that whole region for many years. And only later on does he go to Yisro and marry Tzipporah. And so Moshe is a king in his own right already before he even comes back to Egypt, before the burning bush. This is all happening in the 6th Parsha, but it's hidden behind the scenes, a lot of it. So he goes to the burning bush, Hashem comes to him, and for 7 days Moshe argues with Hashem. Having this debate, Hashem says, go and take my people out. Interestingly enough, we all know this phrase, take my people out. Let my people go. The same phrase, we hear it over and over again. We heard it mostly recently in the last 50 years with the Russians, with the refuseniks. There's one other word that's not been pushed into it. The Pasuk says, and it says it many times, let my people go, va'avduni, so that they may serve me. We forget that last part. We don't only want to be let go. We don't only want to be released. We need to be released in order to serve Hashem. Okay, so Hashem reassures Moshe. He tells Moshe his names, that he's known as Hashem, and Moshe now goes back to Egypt. He meets his brother Aaron on the way, and Aaron is ecstatic that Moshe is coming back to rescue the Jewish people. Moshe was very worried. He says, I've got an older brother. He's the leader of the Jewish people in Egypt. I can't usurp his position. But Hashem says, no, it'll all be good. Aaron will be happy. And he goes back. Hashem gives him various signs to show the Jewish people, to show the Egyptians. And they go back to Egypt together. I'm just trying to see if I can see one verse. I'll see a quick story, but I can't see the verse. Yeah. when Reb Aaron Kotler, who was one of the leading rabbis in Europe pre-war, was deciding to go to, he was able to get out of Europe, and he didn't know if he should go to America, which in those days, in the late 1930s, America was a midbar, it was a desert. Or should he go to Israel, where his father-in-law was? And there was this huge tumult he didn't know. And the story apparently is there's a thing called the Gorel Hagra, where somebody takes a Tanakh, and through various different opening of certain pages and putting things in, I don't know how it works, but you find a verse that is relevant to you. And the pasuk that he came to was this pasuk about Moshe and Aaron. The verse goes, I'll just read the English. Hashem said to Aaron, now his name was Aaron Kotler, go to meet Moshe. Reb Moshe Feinstein was in America at the time. He was like the first of the big rabbis that had come from Europe to America in the wilderness, or to the wilderness, the midbar. So America was a midbar. So Reb Aaron Kotler saw this and he said, okay, Hashem has given me a sign to go to America. And he set up Lakewood. When he went to Lakewood and set up the Lakewood Yeshiva, Lakewood was a tiny village, literally a village. And today, the Lakewood Yeshiva is one of the biggest in the world, as well as the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of other Jews in all the surrounding towns and in Lakewood itself. It's now become this massive Jewish area. In those days, the whole of America essentially was a desert, a midbar, a wilderness. That's just a little anecdote on that pasuk. Okay, Moshe and Aaron come to Paro, and Paro makes it harder for the people. He takes away their straw. They were given straw to make the bricks, and he takes away, he says, no, you've got to collect your own straw now. But you still have to make the same number of bricks every day. Didn't drop that. And so now the slavery gets worse as the time goes on. And that ends Parshas Shmos. We're into the book of Shmos. Interestingly enough, the book of Shmos means names, because the Parsha lists the people who came down to Egypt. It's all about names. Moshe and Aaron's name, Hashem's names. There's various different names in the book. The next Parsha is Va'era. And Va'era is really where the start of the Exodus from Egypt happens. We have 7 of the 10 plagues in Va'era, and 3 in Parshas Bo. And there's an easy way to remember that. Parshas Bo, Bet Aleph, is 3, 2 plus 1. Va'era, the first 2 letters, Vav and Yu, no, it doesn't quite work. Vav and Yu doesn't work. It's Vayedaber. Va'era does work, of course it does. Vav and Aleph, it's the next verse. The first verse in Va'era is Vadaber Elokim El Moshe Vayomer Elav Ani Hashem. Hashem spoke to Moshe and said to him, I am Hashem. The next verse says, Va'era, I appeared El Avram ve'el Yitzchak ve'el Yaakov, to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. The word Va'era, Vav is 6 and Aleph is 1, 6 and 1 is 7. So the first 2 letters of Va'era is 7. First 2 letters of Bo is 3. That's how we know there's 10 plagues in how they're split into 2 parshas. You can work out lots and lots of things, and we might have another one. We might have a more complicated one afterwards. It's something that I heard on Thursday or Friday, which I said in Shul on Shabbos. Okay. The plagues, we go through all the plagues, we all know the plagues. Essentially, the plagues are all midah keneged midah, measure for measure. Whatever the Egyptians did to us, that's what Hashem did to the Egyptians. The plagues were miracles on the Egyptians. Every one of them was not a miracle for the Jews, essentially. It was natural for the Jews. For example, blood comes along. So all the waters in Egypt turned to blood, except for the waters of the Jews. That was natural. So an Egyptian was drinking a glass of water as the plague started. It turned to blood. He came to the Jew and he said, oh, you've still got water. Give me some water. As he started drinking it, it turned to blood. Jewish guy said to him, give me some money. I'll sell you the water. Then it stayed water. He'd put his straw. Interesting enough, we're in Thailand. You can still get plastic straws in Thailand. That's right. It's a nice way to drink. So he'd put his plastic straw into, they didn't have plastic in those days, whatever straw he had, he'd put into his cup of water, and the Jewish guy's water, and he'd start drinking it with blood. The Jewish guy's drinking the same water, and it's still water. The miracle was happening to the Egyptians as opposed to the Jews. The frogs came into the Egyptian houses, into the Egyptian ovens, into the Egyptian areas. where the Jews were, there were no frogs, etc., etc. Each of the plagues was a miracle on the Egyptians. The Jewish people had normal living. When there was darkness, it was light for the Jews. The Jewish people walked around the Egyptians' houses in the plague, and that's in the next parsha, but in the plague of darkness, it was so dark that the Egyptians were stuck. I don't know if you've ever been in a mine shaft. I've been a couple of times, and we went down near Johannesburg to, I think it was the second or third deepest mine in the world. And they said to us, switch off your lamps. It was absolute black because you couldn't feel your hand in front of your face. That's what it was like, times X-fold for the Egyptians. They couldn't move. They were stuck in place for 3 days. And the Jewish people walking around their house in absolute light. That's the contrast. And this, it's all things to discuss in Pesach Seder about how these plagues all worked. So we got through blood, frogs, lice, wild beasts, plague, epidemic, boils, hail. And that ends the Parshas Va'era. Parshas Bo comes along, and as we said, there were 3 plagues in Bo, but Bo's got much, much more than 3 plagues. The 8th plague was locusts. The 9th plague was darkness, as we said, and then the Jewish people are given the first mitzvah as a people. The mitzvahs start up again in Parshas Bo in a big way. The first mitzvah given to the Jewish people is Rosh Chodesh. And then they're given all the mitzvahs of Pesach Seder to bring the Pesach offering, the Korban Pesach, what to do with it. They took it into now remembering the lamb was an Egyptian god. And the Jewish people took this god into their homes 4 days before the Exodus. We have Shabbos HaGadol to remind us of that event. Now, I'm not sure what it was like having a lamb tied to your bedpost for 4 days, but be that as it may, Hashem hopefully created some kind of miracle at least to keep it clean. But they took these, and the Egyptians said, what are you doing? They said, no, we're going to slaughter this in 4 days' time and we're going to eat it. And one of the number of the mitzvahs about the Korban Pesach is it's slaughtered, it's skinned, but it has to be cooked entirely whole. You have to see that it is a sheep or lamb or a goat, kid goat. So that the Egyptians would look at this and they'd see these things sitting on the spit outside. Fully, that's their God being slaughtered and cooked, barbecued and eaten by the Jewish people. Do you know the first shawarmas in history? Pesach night. We say on Seder night we eat the matzah. No, we don't have a Korban Pesach yet. Please God, it should happen this year. We need to be in the temple in Yerushalayim, but we eat matzah. The matzah we eat is hard. Many Sfadim are accustomed to eat soft matzah. We will hopefully eat that when we get back. But let's call soft matzah lafa because that's really what it is, but just not had time to rise. They'd take their lafa and they'd put some charif onto it, maror, and put some shawarma meat or lamb onto it, roll it up. You couldn't have hummus, but roll it up. They probably could because it's not chametz, but roll it up and eat it as a shawarma. That's what it is. Hillel says in the Seder, they ate their matzah and Korban Pesach and maror together in one. Shawarmas were invented in the Torah, not in the Middle East. No, because they had soft matzah. The hard matzah is the Eastern Europe thing, Ashkenazi thing. Okay, so then we're told about the plague of the firstborn, that all the firstborn are being killed. We're told about the Pesach offering. And Hashem says he himself is going to carry out this specific plague. He's not sending an angel. He's going to jump over the homes of the Jewish people because they put the blood on the doors. Where was the blood put? On the inside of the doors. The blood wasn't put for Hashem to see the blood. The blood was for us to see inside. Oh, we Jews, we're different. We need to know what we're doing. We need to know we've got mitzvahs that we need to keep. Hashem tells us about Pesach, they're not allowed to eat chometz, tells us about the Pesach offering. And then we're all sitting in our houses at night waiting for the plague to happen. At midnight, Egypt is devastated because every single household has death. And some houses, it's not one person who dies, it's 3, 4, 5, 6 people who die. And say, hang on, but Ahmed over there is the firstborn. Yes, he is the firstborn to your husband, but you also had a firstborn with X, Y, and Z. because the Egyptians were the most corrupt society of all time, most immoral society. And so each household had potentially 4, 5, 6 firstborns who were dying. And so Egypt is dying. And we all know that song. We're not going to play it now, but I could have had it on the playlist and thrown it in as well. Paro in pajamas, raining down the street. Paro comes raining down. Moshe, Aaron, and the kids are, this is nice to play it at a Seder when there's kids there. What happened? Paro came down raining in his pajamas. You get one of the kids to dress up as Paro in pajamas. And you get other kids to say, where's Moshe? And the one kid points left. And where's Moshe? Another kid points right. Another kid points that way. And you make Paro run around and be completely lost. That's what literally was happening. Paro couldn't find Moshe. And Moshe said, no, we're going to go out. Beshallach, we're going in the morning. And we know, as we're told, that we left Egypt in the morning. We left in haste. We didn't have time to let the other dough that we had rise. Now, interestingly enough, in the Seder, we have matzah. We have matzah at the beginning. It's called lechem oini, poor people's bread. But when we go out of Egypt, we're going out in pride. And so matzah changes to become rich person's food. It has the status. It was actually the food that we ate in Egypt, because it's very easy to take some flour, take some water. When you're slaves, you don't have time to cook. Mix it together, create a dough and cook it. You don't have time to eat and proper meals and everything. And so that was the bread we ate in Egypt. But it's also the bread of our freedom. We're able to flip things. There's several stories about, we see Hasidim running around dressed in shtreimels. What's a shtreimel? It's a beaver's fur or something. In certain parts of Eastern Europe, Jews were told, you've got to wear a tail of a fox or something around your head. It's a sign of degrading, making the people feel down. And we said, no, we're going to make that a sign of pride. And so therefore we wear a shtreimel. That type of story comes like that. Certain Hasidim don't wear full-length trousers. They wear like pants knickerbockers with long socks, because they were not allowed to wear long pants. They were told, we're degrading you. You're going to wear short pants. We're going to make that a sign of pride. That becomes our uniform to show that even whatever you try and do to us, we will still be here and we will do things in a proper way. So Hashem says every firstborn is sanctified, and we know that today, if you have a firstborn child who's not a Kohen or Levi, not a cesarean section, various other things, that child needs to be redeemed, because the firstborn should have been serving in the temple. It was given over to Kohanim and the Leviim supporting them. So we need to, if we have firstborn animals are given to Kohanim. If we have a firstborn donkey, all of these need various different halachas applied to them, but a firstborn donkey needs to be redeemed against a sheep. And so in all of these cases, the firstborn is brought out. And the Parshas Bo ends with the first 2 chapters discussing tefillin. And every pair of tefillin in the head and in the arm are 4 chapters from the Torah. 2 of them we include is Shema, V'ahavta, and V'haya, the paragraphs in the Shema. And the other 2 are these last 2 paragraphs in Parshas Bo, discuss tefillin. Tefillin is discussed 4 times in the Torah. And that ends Parshas Bo. We're now out of Egypt. Come to last Shabbos' Parsha, Beshallach. Hashem sends us out of Egypt, and he says, I'm not going to send you the direct way, we're going to go a roundabout way. And they go this roundabout way, and eventually they come around, they go backwards, and they come back to, and they sort of trapped between Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, or the Red Sea, which generally Yam Suf we translate as Sea of Reeds. They're trapped between there and this mountain and this idol that's on the mountain. After 3 days of going out, Paro has messengers that he sends, spies, that he sends with the Jewish people, and they say, no, these people are lost in the desert, go and attack them. Paro changes his mind, and he gets 600 of his top chariots and every other chariot and horseman, and they chase after the Jews and overtake them. And the Jewish people are standing at the edge of the sea, trapped between Paro, this God on the mountain, and the sea, and they don't know what to do. And Moshe is praying, and Hashem says, stop praying, now's not the time to pray, get in the water. And the sea splits. And the sea splits, and this is the first time that the Jewish people have a miracle for themselves. A miracle's done for us. The sea is not supposed to split, and it splits. According to Chazal, there were 12 separate paths. Each of the tribes had their own pathway, and they all went through the sea. According to other Chazals, there's also thought that they actually went in like a semicircle. So they didn't cross the sea, they went around. Others say they crossed straight through. Be there either way, they went in, and as they went in, the land was dry. If the kids wanted water, they'd stick their cup into the wall and they'd get a glass of pure water. There were trees growing there. They could just pull a fruit off the tree and eat it. It was completely miraculous. But as the last person of Bnei Israel went through, the waters came tumbling down behind them. And the Egyptians chased after them, and the waters wiped out the Egyptians. That was natural. That's what the waters are supposed to do. So the miracle flipped. We had in the 10 plagues, the miracles were all on the Egyptians. It was natural for us. In the sea, it was the opposite. We had the miracle and natural for them.
What was the name of the first man who went into the water?
Nachshon ben Aminadav.
I'm not holding back that you
Good. So Nachshon was the leader. Oh, okay. Okay, good. Nachshon was the leader of the tribe of Yehuda. And he said, no, we need to go. And the Midrash brings that he walked into the water till his nostrils. And then Hashem split it. You need to go in. You need to take the move. You need to go in, and Hashem will act for you, but you need to act first.
Oh, the other quick question. Why do we have buckwheat last Shabbos? Nice. Why do we eat buckwheat last Shabbos?
I've got no idea.
Because
I heard somebody saying something about buckwheat,
it symbolises tweeting of the birds because the birds accompany us.
Okay, so that's okay. Okay, that's a good one. Okay, so I'll tell you about the birds quickly now that you mentioned them. There is a very old custom to put out bread for the birds on last Shabbos. Now, there's a problem with putting out bread for animals that are not food for animals that are not your own. To feed a wild animal on Shabbos is a problem. And so Magen Avraham came along and he said, well, we don't feed birds. Now, because it's an old minhag, many people say it's okay on this Shabbos, and I'll give you the reason for it in a moment. Magen Avraham came along and he said, no, rather put out bread on Erev Shabbos. Now, it's too late this week because it was last week. But so just before Shabbos comes in, put out some stale bread, let the birds eat it, because we have a karas tov. We have gratitude because when we got the man, which is given in this week's parsha, the manna from heaven, Hashem rained down manna from heaven for us to feed us. It came down every day. There was enough for each person. Incredible miracle. And they were only given enough for each person. And some of the Jewish people, the same old Dasan and Aviram that caused Moshe problems in Egypt, caused him problems here. Some people put out bread, or put out their man, left it out at night, so they could say, no, it doesn't come only in the mornings, it comes at night as well. It's there, it's like not a miracle, it's just normal. Next morning that mud turned wormy and moldy, to prove that it was. And then Moshe comes along, Hashem says to him, tell everybody that on Friday you're going to get double. And the double is for Friday and for Shabbos. And the Shabbos one, you need to prepare it all on Friday, and then you'll eat it on Shabbos. And you're not going to get any on Shabbos. And Dasan and Aviram come along and they put some man out on Shabbos morning. They put it outside their tent or wherever, somewhere in the thing, and so that they'll show them, Hashem's right, Moshe's lying, he's just making all of this up. Because there's man out there. And the birds came along and ate that. And so we have a karas tov for those birds. 3,500 years ago, we give the birds today some bread to say, you know what, birds, you saved us. It was great. Thank you very much. We got a karas tov. Now, interestingly enough, the whole thing with man was miraculous food. It was incredible food. It could taste like almost anything you wanted. It had the consistency of anything you wanted. It looked like coriander seeds. It tasted in its natural form like wafers with honey. But you wanted to eat ice cream every day, you could be eating Golder's ice cream every single day from Mamila. You wanted it to eat steak and chips. It can be the best steak and chips you've ever had. You wanted a burger, whatever you wanted to be. There were few foods that it couldn't taste like, it didn't have the texture of. And when the Jewish people complained, we complained several times about the man, even in this week's parsha, but later on we complained, they listed certain foods, and those foods were all the foods that the man wasn't able to taste like, because those foods might not be healthy for certain people, whatever reasons there are. But this man was phenomenal food. It came every single day. We commemorate the man on Shabbos by having 2 loaves of bread. Because the double portion we got on Friday, we have 2 loaves of bread on a Shabbos. We also we put the man on a challah board and we cover it on top. There's 2 reasons we cover it. Top and bottom is because the man came in a layer of dew, top and bottom. It was protected. And so that's why we cover it with a challah cover and have a board underneath. The other reason is we don't want the challah to be embarrassed. Now that sounds ridiculous, but it's not. Because normally when you have a meal, you wash first and you have the bread first. If you're going to have wine in the meal, you'll have your wine in the meal and you'll say Borei Pri HaGofen on the wine. On Friday night, on Shabbos, on Yom Tov, we have the wine first. So as not to upset the bread, we cover the bread to say there's no bread here. Now I'm saying that very much in quotes because bread doesn't get upset. But it's a message to us. If, for whatever reason, the bread is not on the table or there's something not there, it's a message. Just bread can't get embarrassed, but people can. Don't get angry at your Shabbos table. It's not worth it. That's the message of covering the bread. Don't get any time, but especially at the table. Don't embarrass somebody in public. Okay. Sorry? Yeah. Okay. We got a few more minutes to go. Parshas Beshallach also has Az Yashir, the Shira. We sang a song thanking Hashem, and that song is one of the very few things. We've spoken about the tefillin and the Shema, which is obviously in davening every day. If you wear tefillin, we say the 2 parshas of tefillin. Most of the people in the room don't, but not for any reason, but the halacha says not to. But the Az Yashir, the Shira, is one of those things, one of very few things that's actually included in our tefillah every day. It's included in part of Pesukah de Zimra every single day. This week's Parsha, Yisro, we'll get to in a moment, includes the Aseres HaDibros, the 10 Commandments. For want of a better term, I don't like using that word because it's 10 statements, not 10 mitzvahs, but they're not included in the Siddur anymore. They used to be way back when in times of the Gemara, before the Gemara. But then various people started saying, yes, it's just the 10, and they elevate them. And so the rabbi said, no. So if you look in any decent Siddur, you'll find after davening in the morning, you'll find the 10 Commandments. Some people say it, some don't. You also find after davening, interestingly enough, something called Parshas Haman, the whole story of the man. And the manna is food, it's bread, it's earnings, it's salary. So we daven, people say that so that we should be properly supported by Hashem. We should earn the proper amount that we're supposed to get. Last week, on Tuesday, because last week's Parsha Beshallach man was brought there, the whole story of man was in there. On Tuesday, because Tuesday is a day where it says Ki Tov in creation, that it was good twice, many people have accustomed to read Parshas Haman and daven that Hashem should give us whatever panas we need. So that's a few things that are put in the Siddur or left out the Siddur, but there's not very much from the Torah itself in the daily davening. Okay, so that we've gone through the Shira, spoken about the man, the people complained, they got water from a rock in this week's Parsha, they told about the Shabbos, as we said, and the end of last week's Parsha is the battle with Amalek. People complained, they went, and there were people at the back, and Amalek, our cousin from Esav, attacked us. And this is actually the laning that we do on Purim, which is in a month's time. Pesach's in 2 months' time. Not to scare anyone. It's very early this year in the calendar year.
What date is it?
Pesach's or 1st of April?
Yeah, it's very early in the calendar year.
No one played.
Okay, so Yeshua goes and saves the Jewish people. He goes into battle, and Moshe stands on a hill, and with him is Aaron and Hur, his nephew. And Moshe's getting tired. He's got his arms up, and they're looking at Moshe's arms. And as Moshe's arms drop, they sort of start losing the battle. And when he lifts up his arms, they're winning the battle. And so Hur and Aaron hold his arms up. And Moshe's arms are not creating a miracle, but through his arms they look up and they see, oh, Hashem's with us. And they get extra inspiration. It's there. You often see it. A natural thing people do when they want inspiration is they look up.
True.
Yeah. And it's looking up to Hashem. That's really what it is. It's looking up into your brain as well, maybe, but it's thinking, just connecting to Hashem. And that ends Parshas Beshallach. We're into this week's Parsha. In a couple of minutes, what's in this week's Parsha? Parshas Yisro. Yisro is Moshe's father-in-law. Moshe had met Yisro a few weeks ago in the Parsha. Moshe had sent Tzipporah and his two sons, Gershom and Eliezer, back to Yisro when he went into Egypt. He said, Aaron had suggested it's not for them, let's keep them away. And Yisro, the Parsha starts, Vayishma Yisro Kohen Midian Chosen Moshe. Yisro, the Kohen of Midian, the chief high priest of Midian, heard. Yisro, the father-in-law, he heard. What did he hear? Everything that Hashem did for Moshe and Israel, and Klal Israel, that Hashem had taken us out of Egypt. And Rashi brings there, what did he hear about? He heard about Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea, and he heard about the war with Amalek, that Amalek had attacked us. And Yisro heard and he acted. The whole world knew about Kriyas Yamsuf. It's brought down that every bit of water in the entire world split. Everybody knew what was going on, but only Yisro acted. We hear lots of things, but we don't act. Yisro acted. And Yisro came along, and it's a whole discussion. When did he actually come? Was it before the receiving of the Torah? Was it afterwards? How long was he there for? Because he leaves. But he converted, his children converted, and we have records of descendants of Yisro being very great people through the Jewish world. But he brings Moshe's wife Tzipporah. We'll learn much more about her as we go through the rest of the Torah. And Moshe's two sons. And Yisro comes along and they join the camp. And Moshe puts on a big feast for him, and Yisro is very happy. And Yisro watches what's going on. Now remember, he's been a high priest of every Avodah Zorah in the world. You know, he is the main priest of worldly religions. And Yisro knows what's going on. He's a leader, and he says, Moshe, this is not on. Moshe sits there all day listening to people's disputes and judging, and Moshe is the base there. And Yisro says, no. You need to do it in a different way. Gather a group of people, gather leaders of tens, of hundreds, of thousands. Set up a whole judicial system that people can hear the lower type cases in a local court. And then the big stuff, that on appeal can come to you, Moshe. And Moshe agrees, and he sets up exactly what Yisro says. And then the Parsha says, and Yisro leaves. And there's a whole discussion, did he leave at that point now? Did he wait? When did he actually leave? Did he ever come back? But at this point in time, the Torah says, Yisro went to his own land to go and teach people about Hashem, essentially. And then we come to the whole Parsha of Mount Sinai and the giving of the Torah. And that's, the bulk and the main part of this week's Parsha. It's interesting that, two interesting things. Very few Parshas in the Torah have people's names in them as the name of the Parsha. And those that do, a number of them are not Jewish people. Yisro, at the time, he wasn't Jewish at that point. He converted, did he convert, whatever. We have Chayesara, we have Yisro, we have Bilam, or Balak actually, the Parsha's Balak. We have Pinchas, but they're very few. But Yisro is credited with getting a Parsha. When Yisro comes to visit Moshe, we have the first time in the Torah, I think the only time in the Torah, that Yisro says, Baruch Hashem. Blessed be Hashem. Hashem is, Baruch literally is Hashem is the source of all blessing. That's really what it's saying. Yisro is the first person to coin that phrase in the Torah. They come to Sinai. It's in the 3rd month after the Exodus. They come to Sinai. They journeyed, and Hashem says to Moshe, come up to the mountain. And Moshe goes up and down several times. And we get ready to receive the Torah, and we get the Torah. And it was thunder, and it was lightning, and it was clouds on the mountain, and the sound of the shofar got louder and louder and louder, and the people shuddered in the camp. And the Torah says Mount Sinai was smoking, because Hashem had come down in a fire, whatever that means, Its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the entire mountain shuddered exceedingly. And the sound of the shofar grew and grew and grew. Now, when we blow shofar, we lose breath. So, somebody can blow, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, and it's going to just tail off. This is Hashem blowing a metaphysical shofar, whatever that means. The sound got louder and louder and louder and louder. And Hashem would speak through Moshe. Moshe would speak, and Hashem would respond to him with a voice. And Hashem then says, right, time to give the people the Torah. It's time to make the Jewish people, not called Jews. The word Jewish people comes from Yehuda, Yehudim. We were Bnei Israel, but it's time to give Bnei Israel the Torah. And Hashem came and he says, Anochi Hashem Lakecha, I am Hashem your God. Asher Otzeisicha me'eretz Yisrael, that took you out of the Egypt. I am Hashem God who took you out of the land of Egypt, the house of slavery. Why didn't Hashem say, I'm Hashem your God who created the world? Because Hashem created mankind when he created the world. And all of mankind were created, and all of mankind are part of the world. But what Hashem is telling us now is no, we are separate, we are different. The rest of the world have 7 mitzvahs. Hashem says now, Bnei Israel, you've got something more you've got to live up to. You need to be the people who teach the world. You need to be the people who show the world how to live properly. That's what what did Hashem do? He sent us down to Egypt so that we could grow, so that we could come and be ready to receive the Torah. So Hashem says this, and the people are from seeing Hashem's presence, people are flying many, many miles away, whatever that means. But essentially they have some form of dying, and they're resuscitated. And Hashem says again, shall not recognize the gods of others in my presence. And the second of the Aseret Dibros. And the people die again. And the people come back to Moshe and say, this is just too much. Our souls can't handle this. We're going to die properly. So the rest of them, Hashem spoke to Moshe, and Moshe transmitted it to the people. But it's brought down according to all sources. The first 2 were heard directly from Hashem. The others heard through Moshe Rabbeinu. We all know them. I'm not going to go through them all now, but essentially there's 5 on the first tablet, there's 5 on the second tablet. Tablets are only spoken about later on, but the first 5 are between man and God, the second 5 are between man and man. The 5th of the 10 commandments is honor your father and your mother. But that's between man and his fellow man, between me and my parents. And so it's brought down, no. There's 3 parties involved in a child. You can't have a child without Hashem. And so it's mother, father, and Hashem. And so therefore the relationship you have with your parents needs to be with me, my parents, and Hashem. It's a 3-way relationship from the child. And so therefore it is directly connected to Hashem, but it's also the bridge between the mitzvahs ben Adam l'makom, between man and Hashem, and ben Adam l'chavero, between man and his fellow man. And we get all the Aseret Dibros, and the Parsha ends basically very soon after that. The last mitzvah in the Parsha, the last thing we're told in the Parsha is, if you do make an altar, make it of earth, and when you make the altar, make sure that it doesn't have steps on it, it has a ramp. And that's the end of Parshas Yisro. Next week we come to Parshas Mishpatim. And Mishpatim is all about civil laws. And it is just filled with mitzvahs, one mitzvah after another. But we've got to get through Yisro first. Okay, as we started, we said that we have today Tu Bishvat. So we've got just a few minutes. Let's go through a couple of things, few things related to Tu Bishvat. The Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, right at the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, the first Mishnah says, Abba Roshei Shonim Haim. There are 4 Rosh Hashanahs. We know of one. Let's see if that one is here. I'll just read through it in English, given the time. The first of Nisan is the new year for counting of Jewish kings. So a Jewish king, when they, essentially it's for legal documents, when they would date a document. They didn't date the document the year 5786 or 2026, or whatever it was. Year of the reign of King David, 5th year of his reign, whatever it was. And that year started from the 1st of Nisan. I guess we have a similar thing where horses' birthdays, or 1st of August. All horses are born on the 1st of August. No, they're not. If a horse is born on the 31st of July, it's 1 year old on the 1st of August, even though it's 1 day old. Not here, but in some countries, exactly right. Yeah, some countries, in Australia, no, it's month by month. But in certain countries, very much cars also have registration on the same day. And also in Nisan is Regalim, counting of the 3 festivals. After one makes a vow. If you make a vow, you have to pay it back within 3 festivals. That's also brought as a Rosh Hashanah. Okay, then the 1st of Elul is the new year for newborn animals. For tithing of animals, any animal born before the 1st of Elul is 1 year old and needs to be tithed by then. Rabbi Lezer says, and Rabbi Shimon says it's the 1st of Tishrei. Be that as it may, it's the same Yom Tov. The 1st of Tishrei, which we call Rosh Hashanah, and here it says the 1st of Tishrei is the new year for counting the years of non-Jewish kings by which legal documents are dated. Nothing to do with our 1st of Tishrei. And it's also the start of Shemitah and Yovel years. Every 7th year is Shemitah. That's when it starts from. And every 50th year is the Yovel year. That's where the word Jubilee comes from in English. And for counting 3 years for a sapling. The first sapling has to go through 3 years. And determining which vegetables need to be tied together. All agricultural related things. Where's the rest of this Mishnah? The page has gone out of order. Here we go. And then it says, Be'echad Bishvat Rosh Hashanah La'ilan Kedivrei Beis Shammai. The 1st of Shvat, 2 weeks ago, is the new year for determining, I'm going to read what Art Scroll puts in here, for determining which fruits of a tree should be tithed together, according to Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel say, B'chamesha Asaboy, it's on the 15th of that month, which is today. Okay, so we've got, essentially, the Mishnah says there are 4 Rosh Hashanahs. It listed 5 things, 5 different days of Rosh Hashanah, and the 5th one of these is, let's just go with Beis Hillel. We generally follow Beis Hillel, the house of Hillel, and that it's on the 15th. What is it? It is Rosh Hashanah La'ilan. As we said at the beginning, La'ilan not is the song. Plural, we say La'ilan. What is this referring to? The tree. It's determining the fruit of the tree. We have one tree, Pre-Eitz Hadar. And many, many people today from that learn out from a whole lot of Kabbalistic sources that today we daven for an esrog, that we're going to get a beautiful esrog to do the mitzvah of esrog in 9 months' time. Today, 9 months, the 15th of Tishrei. And so there is a special tefillah that was written by the Ben Ish Chai to daven for a beautiful esrog. I mean, in English, to some of it says, "May be you will Hashem, our God, God of our forefathers, that you bless all of the esrog trees to bear fruit at their proper time. They shall bear esrogim that are good, nice, beautiful, and clean from any blemish, that no lichen come upon them, and they shall be complete, and they should not have any deficiencies, even pricked by a thorn. They should be available for us and for all of Klal Yisrael in every place, and in order to fulfill the mitzvah of taking the esrog with the lulav on the holiday of Sukkot, that shall come before us for a good life with peace, as you've written in your Torah from Moshe your servant. And on the first day you should take yourself the beautiful fruit of the tree, date fronds, branch of the myrtle tree, and branches of the willow brook. May it be will Hashem our God, the God of our forefathers, that you help us and assist us in this mitzvah of taking lulav, myrtle, willow, and esrog in the proper manner, in its proper time, on the holy holiday of Sukkot. That shall come upon us for good life and for peace, with happiness and good-heartedness. And you shall make a nice, beautiful esrog that is clean of all blemishes, deficiencies, and complete and kosher according to all its laws. Beautiful tefillah. I've just said tefillah in English. Please God Hashem should give everybody the right esrog. Okay. So today is the new year of the trees. Now, let's put ourselves, we're in the southern hemisphere. It doesn't work. Put yourself in the northern hemisphere. Now, Israel today, forecast on the coast is to be 30 degrees. It's to be over 20 in Yerushalayim. Freak weather in winter, but just go a little bit across the Atlantic. It is extremely freezing cold. I think I saw somewhere that it's even snowing in Miami.
Yes, no, no.
And so it is cold. Now, the trees are bare. There is no first blossoms even coming up on the trees. How can this be the new year of the trees? Surely the new year of the trees should be when they're in full blossom, in springtime when they're beautiful, or maybe when we harvest them, when we've got the fruit, because we're talking about the fruit trees here. And so what is brought down is the tree now, in Eretz Israel for sure, they've received most of their rain for the winter. There might be some more rain in the next few months, and there's occasionally is rain even a little bit into summer, but most of the rain for this year has fallen already. The tree is now at a state where it's about to start regenerating. The sap starts going up in the tree. That's the machlokas, the argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Does the sap start going up the tree on the 1st of Shvat or the 15th of Shvat? The sap going up the tree, it's something completely internal. The tree is starting to generate and starting to grow. That's what it's all about. It's about seeing the hidden. It's about saying, oh, there's something hidden in this tree. That's what we're celebrating today. So what the custom is to eat many fruits today. This is one of those holidays that until the 1500s and the time of the Arizal, which is why I have that behind me. This is a painting by David Friedman in Tzvat. It's a picture of the Arizal and Rashbi, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. The Arizal is buried in Tzvat. Rashbi is buried in Meron, just across the valley, in the mountain across the valley. And there is a tree. Now, if you can read the Hebrew around it, it says that Eitz Chaim Hi L'Machazikim Ba. It's a tree of life. Now, the hard thing with reading it, it's hidden. I can see it beautifully in my screen in front of me. The writing is actually the grey, not the green. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, but until you see it, it's actually quite hard. But yeah, so that's why I put that up there, because the Arizal, until the times of the Arizal, this was a hidden day. Nobody knew about it. Now, Arizal and his Kabbalists in Tzvat came up with a whole Seder, which many people actually will do today. They had a Seder where they eat many different fruits, particularly the fruits of Eretz Yisrael, grapes and pomegranates and dates and figs. Dates and figs you need to check properly for bugs. We'll get fruit that they can say a Shechianu on, and they go through a whole Seder, and they even have 4 cups of wine. As I said, Pesach is in 2 months' time. Today.
The birthday of the JNF.
Oh, I'm getting there. Hold on. No. Tisha B'Av, Tu Bishvat was then hijacked. I'm using the word hijacked in very loose quotes here, by the JNF to plant trees. Tu Bishvat has nothing to do with tree planting, but it's become a tree plant. It's phenomenal that we plant trees in Eretz Israel. Land of Israel 150 years ago was swamp and desert. Today it is incredible. The first time I went back to Israel after many years was about 12 years ago. And I flew from this points flight that went all over the Middle East, basically. I landed in Amman in Jordan. Flew from Jordan to Tel Aviv. Now, the flight from Jordan to Tel Aviv, if you get the direct flight, the straight flight path, is 18 minutes, wheels up to wheels down. I had the long flight. It was about 28 minutes or less even. It was even less. But you virtually don't go above the trees. And Amman is quite close to the border. And so you take off, and it is a sandy, desert-type town, city. And as you cross the border, you can almost feel like you can reach out the plane window if it was open and pull a leaf off the top of the tree. You're so low. But you suddenly see greenery, the blessing of Eretz Yisrael. That it's just a contrast. You look back, and it's just desert and third world. And you look forward, and it's this modern, vibrant country with greenery. It was just the most incredible experience, because I hadn't been in Israel for about 25 years. And it was just beautiful. And so that is Tu Bishvat. What is it about? It's deep Kabbalistic things. Now, on Shabbos, I did speak about January the 1st and resolutions and the like. I won't go there now, but just remember, those are things that are fleeting. Those are things that don't last. I don't believe anybody who ever made a resolution on January 1st kept it for more than, I was going to say a month, because it was a month, the month of January was Shabbos finished. I don't think that most people keep it even a week, particularly the ones around eating healthier, smoking, eating, dieting, all those kind of things. That's not the resolutions we make. We make things from depth. We make things of how can I connect to Hashem better? How can I help other people better? What can I do for others? What can I do for my spiritual relationship? And those come from inside. Those come from within us. And that's what this holiday is teaching us. It's teaching us that we need to grow. So I want to just end with two things. Firstly, I alluded to a couple of times about Rosh Hashanah, our first of Tishrei. I'll come back to that in a moment. But just as an aside, the Gemara discusses, it says there are 4 things, and it lists 5. So Gemara goes and discusses that 5-6 pages later, and the Gemara says, why does the Mishnah say there are 4 and then it brings 5? Because the Mishnah is actually referring to the 4 months, because 2 of them are in the month of Nisan. So it's 4 months in the year are Rosh Hashanahs. That's really what it's saying. Which leads us into the second Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. The second Mishnah says the 4 times in the year the world is judged. On Pesach we judge for grain. On Shavuos we judge for the fruits of the tree. On Rosh Hashanah, all those who have entered the world, in other words, all people, all human beings, not only Jews. It's the day, at least according to one opinion in the Gemara, that's the day that mankind was created. Adam and Chava were created on Rosh Hashanah. Shem started creating the world on the 25th of Elul, 6 days before. But all people enter the world, all human beings pass before Hashem like lambs before their shepherd, and he judges them for life or death based on their deeds. That's what the Mishnah says. Atzra adds a few extra words in there based on different commentators and the Gemara. It brings a pasuk and then says, and on the festival, in other words on Sukkot, the world is judged for water. And we know we have a thing called Nisach HaMayim, the water drawing festivals and ceremonies where water libations are poured in the temple. Please God, it should be built soon. So it says here 4 Rosh Hashanahs in the first Mishnah, 4 times the world is judged in the second Mishnah. It doesn't say anything about that Rosh Hashanah, except it says Rosh Hashanah, but it doesn't say anything that is a Rosh Hashanah. Where's this connection? Why it's talking about judgment and not the actual day of Rosh Hashanah? The Gemara discusses that at length and says, no. It's referring here to things in the world, the external type things, but here this is referring to the actual Rosh Hashanah, but it's talking about judgment. It's talking about the way we behave, the way we act, and how we act. And if we combine the two, if we say, how can I be and grow and become a better person? Because the whole process of Rosh Hashanah is judgment. But it's not just that day. We judged every single day. Hashem judges us. The Gemara says Hashem judges us every single night. We go to sleep and we go through some form of judgment. We just have our annual stock take, our balance sheet that happens on Rosh Hashanah on that day. But right now we're at a point, 6 months away, 8 months away from Rosh Hashanah, we can start making resolutions that will last us all the way till then, because we should do tshuva every single day. It's brought down, when should a person do tshuva? The day before they die. But we don't know when we're going to die, therefore do tshuva every single day. Connect to Hashem, make those resolutions that we can connect to Hashem. Let's end with a Mishnah. We spoke about trees. So the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, his first Mishnah, right at the end of chapter 3 of Pirkei Avos, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, if there's no Torah, there's no worldly occupation. Im ein Torah, ein derech eretz. If there's no Torah, then you can't work and live in this world without Torah. You need them completely. But if there's no derech eretz, there's no Torah. You need a balance. Life needs to be balanced. It goes on a whole lot of other things. He says if there's no flour, there's no Torah, and kemach, and Torah, and kemach. You need, life needs to be a balance. You can't have just asceticism. We don't believe, we hear about in many parts of the Christian church, in Buddhism, in other religions, if you want to become a spiritual person, you want to become a minister, you want to become a leader in the community, well then you have to move out of all physicality. Everything becomes purely spiritual. No. We say, no, complete opposite. We want to become spiritual, we need to be physical. We want to be physical, we need to be spiritual. We need to have a blend of both. Our goal in life is to elevate the physical. Why do we say brachas? The whole thing of today is eat food. But when you eat those fruits, say a bracha, say a blessing, because then you're recognizing where it comes from. It actually doesn't come from a tree, it comes from Hashem. We're recognizing the source. That sap that's coming into the tree now is from Hashem. Hashem's put it in place in the world, that in the northern hemisphere anyway, the sap's coming into the trees. The trees are about to start growing again and start getting life again. We need both. We need to mix that physical with the spiritual. We need to elevate this physical through the spiritual. The next Mishnah is the one I want to look at. Hu haya ema, and we've spoken about this a number of times, and through a lot of Mishnah. Hu haya ema, he used to say. Doesn't mean he used to say it. It means he used to say this every single time. This was, if you knew Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, you knew, if you met him, he would tell you these next statements. This is what he would, meet him. Oh, Rabbi Elazar, I've got to tell you something. And this is what he would tell you. And many times in Pekavos, Hu haya ema, he used to say. I'll just read through some of the English on this. It's a longish Mishnah, but there's something that's very interesting here. Anyone whose wisdom exceeds his good deeds, he's very wise, but doesn't do such good stuff. What's he likened to? He's likened to a tree whose branches are numerous. He's out there doing good stuff. He's, this mitzvah day stuff that they have. He's doing mitzvahs. He's not. He's doing chesed, and he's just out and about. But he's not such a clever guy. But he's likened to this tree. He's got lots of branches, but very few roots. He's not settled in. When the wind comes and uproots it, turns it upside down. But if it's said, it shall be like an isolated tree in an arid land, and it shall no good will come to it, etc., etc. It brings a verse from Jeremiah. But one whose good deeds exceeds his wisdom. So in other words, every one of us has got some form of wisdom. Make sure you do much more good than your wisdom, your base case. You were given your wisdom. Our brain power is given to us. Yeah, we can improve it, we can make it worse, but that's a present from Hashem. The things we do, the good stuff we do, that stuff that comes from internal, we put outside, that's up to us. That we can handle, and we can grow and grow. So somebody whose good deeds exceed his wisdom, what is he likened to? What's he compared to? A tree whose branches are few, but whose roots are numerous. Even if all the winds in the world were to come and blow against it, would not budge it from its place. Brings a verse. It shall be like a tree planted by waters towards the stream, spreading its root, and it shall not notice the heat's arrival, and its foliage shall be fresh in the year of drought. It shall not worry, nor shall it cease from yielding fruit. That's what we need to be about. We need to be people who say, Hashem's given me the ability to go out there and do good.